Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope you're all good. My name is Amanda and in today's video we are going to be doing a Sims 4 speed build. So we're building in the world of Willow Creek, as this build was part of my Renovating Willow Creek playlist. I will link it in the cards above if you want to watch the previous builds that we've done. So I mainly was going through Renovating Willow Creek for my own gameplay. I kind of always play in this world and I wanted to create a complete renovation of it for a legacy challenge that I want to do. So I thought I'd get the renovation done first and I've really been enjoying it. So today we're renovating the Parkshore Lot. Now this does already have a house on there when you open up the lot. So I bulldozed that, and then I kind of had a few different ideas that I wanted for this house. I wanted it to have a grand feel to it, and I kind of wanted it to look similar to the build of the Goth house, which you can see is on the lot next door. So I wanted to have some of these large balconies and I just wanted it to feel very grand like that building does, but I didn't want it to have the dark Gothic exterior. I wanted it to be quite light and pretty looking. Now I have in mind for this house a older couple. I kind of wanted this, I called it a generations family home. I'm not sure if that would be the right name, but basically this is an elderly couple and their grown-up children still live at home. So I built this as though we have one young adult daughter who's still living at home. She's working and all that jazz, but just still living at home because it's a cost of living crisis and renting is expensive. And then I had the other room I built for their son, who I kind of was torn between going in and him being a teenager or a young adult at university. So I kind of had both those things in mind when I was doing their rooms, but the rest of the house is more designed for the elderly couple in mind, if that makes sense. Now going in, we've done a lot of the exterior. Like I said, I wanted this to feel very grand, but I did also want to make it look as though this has been their house that they've lived in since before their children were born. So naturally, because it's been like their forever home since they were younger, they've done modernizations to it and things like that, but they've kept with their own style. So I did play around a little bit with how I wanted it to look. I felt as though the lighter tones naturally made it look a little bit more modern. And then on the right hand side where we've got that bump out, I wanted that to be a sunroom. I do end up only going in, it's a very small room, so we only go in and add a piano in there, but I quite liked how it looked. And then for this balcony here, this actually just comes off the side of a hallway, so it's not necessarily a balcony attached to anyone's bedroom, but I wanted it to be a nice little seating area with kind of like a pergola style roof. So we go in towards when we're doing the landscaping and I raise up some bushes to go on that area, and I did end up extending this out. I played around with the balconies a fair bit, and same with kind of how I wanted them to work with the roofing, so they do end up getting made a bit larger. And then we do have this kind of like wraparound back porch. It's not a full wraparound, but I loved how large it was. And then up above that I gave the main bedroom, so what would be the parents' bedroom, a large balcony as well, and I really loved how that space it turned out. I'm popping backwards and forwards between doing the build and landscaping because a few things changed. I was looking at several different reference pictures. I had a couple of pictures on Pinterest of builds that I've been done in The Sims in Willow Creek, and then a couple of real life build pictures as well. So I was kind of trying to combine the two looks in my mind to get what I was going for. And then of course, naturally, as you're building, you add your own ideas and style on. Now, one thing that I don't normally do is a foundation as high as this one, but like I said, I looked at the Goth's house and I kind of liked how that looked, so I did the higher foundation. I'm not actually sure, mine might actually be a bit higher than theirs, I'm not quite sure, but I'm not used to doing these higher foundations, and when it come to landscaping I kind of felt as though it looked a bit strange, so I ended up sizing up some of the plants and with those taller bushes putting one on top of the other, so they kind of look as though they've grown up the foundation a bit more, because I felt as though they looked a bit silly when they were the smaller size up against such a big foundation, but perhaps that was just me. But I did like how it turned out in the end. I wanted the front to look a little bit whimsical, kind of wanted it to fit in with the world of Willow Creek, which I do feel has this very pretty whimsical vibe to it. So I went in and done 2 different terrain paints to create the gravel pathway. I went in with a smaller one first of all, and then layered up the larger one over the top. And then I come in and added some of those larger rocks around as well, so that it kind of just finished off the path a little bit. It kind of made it make a little bit more sense by using the 2 different terrain paints to create that pathway. I then did start coming in and doing some more of the landscaping for the front of the house and some more of the terrain paint as well, just so I kind of was in the flow of doing the front landscaping. Sometimes when I'm building, I'll go backwards and forwards. I'll build the house, do the inside, and then do all of the outside, but majority of the time I like to actually get the front of the house done first, and then I'll kind of jump backwards and forwards between fixing up the exterior and windows and doors and things like that. And especially with this build, my mind changed quite a lot on the exterior. Like, as you can see here now, we're going in and kind of like extending that pergola roof area and bringing it around to the porch. Originally I was going to go in and make the roof wrap around, but I didn't really like how that looked, so I cut out the footage of that. And then I thought, no, I'm going to keep with that kind of pergola look that we've got on the upper balcony and add that down here as well. And I felt as though it just tied in nicely. The bump out in the roof, I didn't like how the roof was looking, so I added that additional bump out in the roof, so it looks as though there's a room up there, but there's not. I kind of just done it for aesthetic purposes. And then I did also want to mention that I did the floor plan for this house off camera as well. I had about an hour's worth of footage playing around with the floor plan because it just didn't work how I wanted it to. And then I messed about with it so much that like I said, I had an hour's worth of footage, and I decided it was just too complicated to keep in the video, because I kept kind of like using the back button to go back to a floor plan I'd done previous, and then rechanging walls and things like that. So in the end, it just was easier to take that out of the video. 1, because this video was already quite long without the floor plan added in, and 2, because I just went backwards and forwards with it way too much. You will obviously see the floor plan as we go inside and do the build interior anyway. And then of course I've left the screenshots which show a kind of like top down version of the floor plan as well, so hopefully you can kind of get the gist if you did want to copy this build in any way. This one is also up on the Sims 4 gallery if you would like to download this build. Now, another thing actually that I chopped and changed my mind a lot on was the front door. Like I said, I really wanted this to have a very grand feel to it, so I felt as though it needed at least a 2-tile grand looking door, and I just struggled with that, so that was something that got chopped changed a lot as well. And then we're finally moving on to inside, and we're going to start off with the kitchen. I have to say, I really loved how this kitchen turned out. It's a little different to what I normally go for, but I loved how it looked. So I started off by doing the checkered style floor by using these floor tiles in 2 different tones, and I really loved how that looked. And then I'd seen a picture recently, it was actually on Facebook, of a dark green kitchen, and I felt like, you know what, that actually is going to work really well for the 2 Sims I have in mind, the elderly couple. So I come in and went with this beautiful dark green swatch of this paint, and then we're going to go in and do the kitchen. So I come in, I wanted to have dark cabinets. Now, I did not realize this when I was doing the build, and I really don't know how I didn't notice this, but I used different upper cabinets to the lower ones. I don't know what I was thinking, because I love these lower cabinets. I believe they're the new ones from the recent base game update we had this year, and I really loved how they looked. And then when I switched into grabbing out upper cabinets, I think the ones I've gone with are from Jungle Adventure. So I don't really know what happened there, but luckily the dark wood tones do work, except for obviously the upper cabinets have different handles to the lower ones. But moving on from that, I really loved how this kitchen looked. I wanted to make sure that it had plenty of clutter to make it lived in. I imagine the elderly mum, she loves still cooking family meals. It was something she loved doing when her children were younger, younger, and even though they've grown up, because they still live at home, she likes to make sure that family meal is cooked most nights, and even if they're not there to eat it all together, the leftovers are going in the fridge. So I wanted it to have a very lived in, cluttered look, and I felt as though it was achieved nicely without it looking too messy. Now this isn't like a huge size kitchen, but I didn't want to put in any kind of seating area here because I wanted to imagine that they've got quite a formal, not a formal, but they've got a separate dining room, and I wanted to imagine that that's where the mum likes to make sure that they eat their meals either there or outside on the sunny days, as there is a table and chairs out back as well. So originally I was going to put like a little breakfast bar in here or an island counter because there definitely was space for it, but I decided against it because I just didn't feel as though it fitted what I had in mind for the Sims living here. So if that meant the kitchen was left feeling quite spacious, which I did also like, and then the dining room's only next door, which of course you can sit down to eat with. And that's exactly what we're moving on to decorating now. And again, this was another room I wanted to have a very grand feel to it, but keeping with the kind of older style, which I felt come through in the curtains. There is quite a mix in this house of older items and modern items, because like I said, I wanted to imagine that they've lived here forever. They moved in when before they had kids, say like in their 20s, and the house has grown with them. So naturally some things have been modernized, but they do have a bit of an older style. So I wanted that to come through. I also imagined the elder dad, I wanted to imagine that maybe he was something like a university professor. I'm not sure. I don't believe we have that job in The Sims. Like, I don't think you have that career. I could be wrong, but I do know with the new businesses and hobbies pack, you can teach classes. So I kind of imagined that that's what he does. I wanted to imagine that he was quite bookish. He loves history and things like that. So I popped this desk down here, which I imagined is where he sits and writes up things for his classes or researches things, and I popped lots of books around in spaces where I imagined he sits, and I really loved how that come through. So we've got like lots of kind of like stacks of books in here and books left out, and I've put some glasses down on the desk and another pile of books. So I imagine that that's kind of his space. Obviously the computer is there for other Sims in the household who want to use it, but I wanted to imagine that predominantly that's his little area in the dining room, and then there's the big large bookcases in there as well, along with a little reading nook over in the corner. So I felt as though it really made use of this room. And then I wanted to imagine that the mum, because she's older, she's got in her grandma era, I wanted to imagine that the living room is more her space, so it's nice and cozy. I wanted to have big comfy sofas and things like that coming through. And then of course their older children do still live here, so it is their home, but I had imagined that they are at work, college, uni, they're out of the house a lot anyway, so they're predominantly in their bedrooms for sleep or their own chill space. So I wanted to imagine kind of like more downstairs, the elderly couples space. And I loved how this living room turned out. It's completely different to like my style, but again, going in with the dark walls, I went with navy. I wanted to make sure that the rooms didn't look too matchy because I feel like that's quite a modern thing to do. I remember always going to my nan's house when I was little, and every room was decorated so differently, whereas I feel now a lot of rooms are modern. We can like lots of neutrals, and that flows through the entire house. So I wanted to make sure that this house was different to that. I also imagined that the elderly woman Sim here, she loves her clutter, she loves random ornaments. Maybe she goes to boot sales or charity shops and picks up all these random decorative bits. So I popped lots of random decor down, and I also thought the puzzles were nice to pop down up there as well. And of course more piles of books. I imagined that this little corner over here, this is the granddad's, he's not a granddad, but the elder Sim's spot. So I popped more books down, some more glasses, headphones, as I imagined he also does like listening to audiobooks as well. And then I just come in and did some random clutter. I thought it was a good idea to pop down the phone. It looks like a smartphone, so perhaps that could be either the daughter or the son's. and then some magazines as well that are there for them, because obviously they are going to come in and use the living space. I did also want to imagine that they have a cat, so I popped down some, I think I stuck with the cat tree in the end. I played around with a few different things. I built this a little while ago, so I can't remember what actually stayed, but I made sure that there was a bed, and I think we popped down I didn't put the food bowls down in the kitchen, I popped them down in the hallway because it was a fairly large hallway space, so I thought we'd make use of some of that. And then I did want to still put down some modern items, so we got the smart speaker, because like I said, you know, they're going to still move with the times. They're not going to stay living in the past, so they want to have some updated items around. Perhaps maybe the daughter bought the smart speaker for her mum for her birthday or Christmas, and I liked having the old school phone down there as well, because I just imagined that they still like to make calls off their house phone. So once we had finished the living room, we're going to move on into the hallway. I went for a little bit more of a neutral tone in the hallway, and then I didn't overly clutter up this space, but I did come in with some large furniture items from, I think they're from the Laundry Day stuff pack. But I was going in here, I was struggling to find rugs that I liked that fit the space, because it goes off like an L shape, and I just found that really difficult when it comes to rugs. But I loved these two, let's call them hutches, from the Laundry Day stuff pack. I felt as though they fitted the room really nicely. They're a great space. Obviously there's 4 adult Sims living here, or even if we say the son's a teenager, so there's lots of coats and shoes and things like that, so it was a great space to have those. And then I just loved this little era, I don't actually know, I think they're like little throws on there, so I popped that down as I thought maybe they're just hanging there either ready to use or to dry. I wanted to come in and place down lots of shoes, because again, you've got 4 Sims living here, so there's going to be lots of shoes and coats and things like that, so I wanted to fill this space up with those kind of items. But then I did also want to come in and add in a few little decorative bits, because like I said, she loves her clutter, so there's random items that they've picked up. I did end up coming in with another rug, the only thing that is round the door, as you go round the right of the stairs, you're going to go into the sunroom, which I've just popped down a large grand piano, because I imagined that when the mum was younger, she really loved teaching her children how to play the piano, so I thought that was a really nice space for it. And the grand piano, it's not something I include in very few of my builds, so I thought this was a really good spot to add one in. And how nice would it be to sit there either playing or learning to play the piano. The only other sort of built room we've got over in this side of the build is a very small bathroom. I say very small, actually, it's a decent size, and I did manage to fit in both I think we just went with the shower tub combo in the end. As you can see, I was being really indecisive, but this is where I also didn't want to imagine a too modern bathroom. I kind of imagine that anything that has been modernized or done up around the house, they've spent that money on rooms that they like, the kitchen and things like that, so I didn't want to go in with anything too modern in the bathroom. I wanted there to still make this look as though maybe this is what the bathroom looked like, say 10 years after they moved in, when they first started doing up bits and bobs in the house. So it's got kind of like an old decor and tiling, but then we've added in a few newer items that look a little bit more modern, i.e. the shelves from the tiny living stuff pack. And then it was only a small space, so it really didn't take me long to decorate. So we then can move on up into the upstairs. And again, this had quite a large hallway, and this is why I struggled so much with this floor plan, just because of where I'd placed the stairs. And I did try changing them around. I just couldn't get it to work, because originally I wanted this to actually be a 4-bedroom house, but I didn't want the rooms to feel too cramped, because I wanted it to have that forever home feel. I wanted to imagine that they moved in their 20s and they knew that this was just going to be the house they stayed in for their life. So I didn't want it to feel like too small. I wanted them to imagine that they had a family big enough to fit into the house. But I really struggled with the floor plan, and then I ended up with quite a large hallway because it was the only way I could get it to work. You could fill that with a few more decorative items. I didn't go too overboard because I did want it to feel semi-spacious. But moving on anyway, we are now into the parents' bedroom. I loved this wallpaper swatch. I feel as though it looks as though they've done the room up, but without going too modern. And then I really loved how it worked with this floor as well. I feel as though this floor looks really expensive. So again, it looks like something that they knew would be good quality and worthwhile investing in. So they went in with a nicer floor. And then I wasn't sure, because I'd built the balcony on a platform. I'm not sure what I did there, but the door obviously needed to have a step up to get out there. So I just put a 1-layer step, and it looked quite nice. It looked a little bit different. It was a nice space to add on the plant as well. I wanted to go for very his and hers bedside cabinets. Again, the dad, he loves to read, so there are books everywhere. Any little space that he's got in the house, you'll find books on. So of course there had to be some on his bedside cabinet. I then went in with this little space over here. Of course they have got a wardrobe, but I think, yeah, they've got the built-in wardrobe, but I wanted to make sure there was this little space over here, because I actually imagined the mum, when she was in her younger years, she was very into fashion and clothing, and she had loads of clothes, and perhaps she's taken that into her elder years with her. So I wanted to add on another space to hang up her clothes. Their room does have a very small ensuite as well, so I didn't go in and put a bath or shower in here. I kind of made it more just a his and hers powder room. So we've got the toilet down there, but then I did put double sinks in, as I'd imagined when you're getting ready, it must be amazing that you've got space in your bathroom for 2 sinks, so you can both be getting ready at the same time. So I made sure I've kind of prioritized that over having a bath or shower in here. But if you didn't want to, you definitely could simply delete one of the counters and one of the sinks and pop a shower there if you felt as though that would make things easier for gameplay. There is another bathroom upstairs anyway, kind of like a family bathroom, but obviously I'd imagine that would be predominantly used by the son and daughter. So we have now moved into this large hallway space, and in all honesty, I was a bit daunted about decorating this, because I kind of was just like, wow, this is such a big space for a hallway. I'm not used to having 2 big hallway spaces, and I wanted this house to feel very lived in, obviously, because they've lived here for years. So I went in with the dresser. Obviously this is a clothing dresser, but I just imagined maybe a storage space. And then I thought this would be a good space to add in a laundry basket. And then I thought, well, if I'm adding in a laundry basket, I might as well add in the washer and dryer. I normally put these in the kitchen, because in the UK that's where we predominantly would have our washer and dryer. However, I know around the world it differs quite a lot. I love watching other people's Sims videos and seeing them building upper utility rooms or having the washer and dryer upstairs in the bathroom. And I actually think it makes so much more sense having your washing machine and tumble dryer upstairs, because that's where all your clothes are anyway. Like, it annoys me so much in our house that I have to carry washing downstairs, wash and dry it downstairs, and then carry it back upstairs to put it away. I would love to be able to do that all on one floor. It just makes much more sense. So in that upper bathroom, I did add in the washer and dryer, but there was still plenty of room for toilet, sinks, and a bath as well. And now we're moving on to one of my favorite rooms in the house. This was my favorite room to do. This is more my style, so I wanted to do this. This is the room for the adult daughter. Now I kind of wanted to have a mixed match of furniture in here. I imagined that she's old enough, she's working her first job, she's finished university, she's in her first job, so she's got a little bit of money, but for whatever reason she's not moved out of home. It's really expensive. Maybe she likes living at home, she gets on well with her parents, it makes sense. She's not at that stage in her life yet of renting her first property, so she still lives at home. But I wanted to imagine that she's spent some of her money on buying and doing up her room. So for example, the bed and this side dresser here over in the window area, but then she's still got some furniture that her parents would have bought her when she was a child or teenager. So for example, the wardrobe and the bedside cabinet are that darker wood tone, and I feel as though we've used that quite a lot in the other rooms, so perhaps that was the style that her parents liked, and she's just not replaced those yet. But she's gone in and bought herself a new desk. She's got a laptop to work on. I've popped the TV up on the desk, and I wasn't sure if this would be functional, but it does, so that was handy. I really love this speaker. I sized down the baby wipes so they kind of just look like face wipes. We popped in a yoga mat, as I imagine she's really into self-care and looking after herself, so yoga is something, or meditation maybe, is something that she's interested in, so I popped down a few bits there, and I wanted this to look quite tidy and grown up in comparison to the son's room. So I imagined like I said, I was a little bit torn between him being either a teenager or a young adult in university, so this room would work for either, but I was kind of leaning towards more him being in university, and I imagined he's a little on the immature side, still quite messy. His mum and dad are still always moaning at him to keep his room tidy, but at the same time knowing that he's old enough to kind of do this stuff himself. So I wanted this room to have a little bit of that feel. Now things like this wall decal with the basketball, this gave me the idea that maybe he's quite sporty, so I tried to pop down some things and have those in mind. I popped down things like the gaming console and this nice little TV setup space, as again, like I said, where they are a bit older, I imagine they do spend a lot of time in their own rooms rather than hanging out with their parents downstairs, so I wanted to make sure there was kind of like a nice space for you to spend time in. I really liked this locker. I felt as though it looked quite random, but it suited the vibe for his bedroom. And then I added in lots of clutter here. We add in some messy piles of clothes. I added in footballs, basketballs. I imagined he's just very into sports, either watching or playing, things like that. So I added in lots of those items, and like I said, I just wanted to make it look quite cluttered and lived in. I felt as though I leaned towards more him being at university at this point, because I popped up the certificate on the wall, so maybe that could be like some kind of certificate you get from finishing school or college before you go off to uni. He's got a little laptop space there to do his coursework or studying on, and then the rest of the space is just quite messy. I come in with the piles of clothing on the floor. I didn't want it to obviously be too messy that you were going to have routine issues if you was playing in here, but I loved how these two rooms turned out. I think they're just such a huge contrast to the rest of the house, so it made them really fun to do. We're then going to move on to the outer balconies. So this one is very simple. It just comes off the hallway, so I just popped down a seating space. I imagined it's a nice spot. You can go sit out there. Perhaps the young adult daughter can sit out there. If you wanted to chat on the phone or just chill on your own, it's a beautiful little spot for that. But then I imagined this balcony when the kids were little and the parents needed some space. This was like their sanctuary, and then as they've got older, they've just used it for lots of plants and things like that. So I popped down the gardening pots, and then I also thought this would be a really cute spot for the cat as well. So I popped down a cat bed, and then a little while on I realized I hadn't popped down any litter trays anywhere, so I thought I'd pop these outside on the porches. Of course, you could move one inside if you wanted to. I've had cats in my life, lots of cats, funny enough, but I've never really had cats that were just indoor cats. They've always been outdoor cats. So I've never had to really stress too much about things like litter boxes. So I wasn't 100% sure where to place these. In The Sims, I usually place them in a bathroom, but I'd built all the bathrooms and none of them were very big. So I decided to place those litter boxes on the porch area anyway, which in a way seems a little bit pointless. Because if your cats are going outside, I'd imagine they're going to use the garden, but they're there anyway because I'm not 100% sure on what cats and dogs are like in gameplay. I have not played too much gameplay in a long time. When I first used to play The Sims, that was all I did, was play gameplay. I then got very into building and that's predominantly what I do now. But I do have a save that I come backwards and forwards to a lot, but then stuff updates so much in The Sims that sometimes it's hard to keep up with new changes and things like that. Like infants come out ages ago now, but I have barely played with them. So if you were to ask me something about infants or infant gameplay, I wouldn't really know about it. But I really do want to get back into playing the game a little, like actually playing the gameplay a little bit more. And I feel like my way of doing this is going to be through some challenges and some legacy challenges and things like that. So if you have any recommendations, do pop them in the comments below. If you are still here, because this has been quite a long video, then thank you so much. We are finishing up now, so I wanted this to be a nice garden space. I loved this raised decking area with the barbecue and the table and chairs. I just imagined this would be an absolute beautiful spot to spend in the summer. Obviously both their children that live here are grown up, so I didn't come in with any kind of children's garden furniture, but I kept the swing set because I imagined maybe that was there from their childhood years and is still a nice spot to sit on even if you're not a child anymore. And then I just added in lots of flowers. I also added in the chicken hut because I had imagined that that's something that the mum has got into as she's got older. I quickly wanted to thank you all so much for watching this video, and if you did enjoy it, please do give it a thumbs up and hit that subscription button if you're not already. Lots of love. Bye bye.